Okay. And that means I also have to remember to announce that today's broadcast and this week's broadcast is sponsored by the Feitach family, the Ilu Nishmas, Choshev Arov, who was Nifter, I think the same day as Chaim Kanevsky, Rav Grainim ben Rabbi Yaakov HaKohen Lezevnik, and V'schus the Saratoyer, Rav Shmaryoya Shem Chaim, and Rabbi Yaakov Yisrael Kanevsky, and the Shom of Aliyah. Also in the schus of our learning, all the sick people should have a refuah shalema, including Rabbi Shimon ben Chasya and Rabbi Shimon Yehuda ben Rivka and Rabbi Yaakov Shmuel ben Chana and Rabbi Yisrael Moshe ben Yente Gittel and Rabbi Leo Shraga Faivish ben Esther. Should have all refuah shalema. Oh, once we're here already, I think I mentioned it yesterday, but I didn't get the exact quote. And they asked Chaim Kanevsky, where do we know this from, that people say that if you're mechabed your parents will in turn, so your children will in turn be mechabed you. Where do you see that? So they asked him that. Medrash, where does that come from? So he says it's a mefurish pasuk in the Torah. There's a palindrome in the Torah. It's speaking about when Yaakov brought food to his father. It says, "Vayaskam hu matamim vayavei la'aviv." Vayavei la'aviv is a palindrome. You can read it forwards and you could read it backwards. So when you're doing for your father, it's your children doing to you. I thought that was a fascinating point that Chaim spoke about without missing a beat. Vayavei la'aviv. Okay. So we're in the middle of discussing if one goes to a city, even though it's known right now as a Goyish city, but we know that at one point in the past, the Aseret Shvatim, thank you so much, Mati. The Aseret Shvatim were there. That's a place where it's usher to marry there. I'm sorry, if someone makes kedushin, we have to be choshed that it is kedushin. It's actually also usher to marry. And this is where I wanted to speak out to Rashi. I didn't remember yesterday where the Rashi was, but the Rashi says as follows: the Aseret Shvatim shenasu oivdois koichavim, which means male Jews married female goyim. The Kosovar and the Gemara holds over here, Asi holds over here, a massive kiddush. The oivedes koichavim sheyoldu Yisrael. If there was a union of a Jewish male and a non-Jewish female, havlad mamzer. The child is Jewish. The child is Jewish with a non-Jewish mother. And the child's a mamzer, and therefore v'choishishen likidushe mamzer. So the reason why you're not allowed to marry anyone from that area is because we're choished that they're mamzerim and they're Jewish because the Jewish men had relations with the non-Jewish women. So there's two issues. First of all, this is a massive chiddush because we always know that Judaism follows the mother. However, let me finish the second thing. And the second thing that we need to point out is why Rashi could have just as easily said that they were Jewish women that lived with Goyish men, and that's where they were mamzer. Right? So Chaim is asking, where's the makar that goes by the mother? It's a good question. I don't know. Does anybody know what the makar is? If it's a goy, if it's a Jew, they would be mamzer.
Jewish lady married a Goyish man?
Yeah, we said Akum Habal Basisol of Black Mamzer. It's based on that.
So isn't it the case? I'll defer to Reb David, but right after Yitzhak Mitzrayim, the guy who didn't know what Shevet to go to because his father was a Mitri and his mother was a Yid. So he was Jewish, but he didn't belong to a Shevet.
So that's the makar that Judaism goes with the mother?
It's a pretty good makar, actually.
I thought that was after Yitzhak Mitzrayim. That was a change.
Doesn't that prove that Judaism also goes with the mother? But how do you know if it was the other way around that a child wouldn't be Jewish? I think like you're ready. So I don't know what the makar is. But that definitely proves that Judaism follows the mother also, at least. So this is a very interesting Rashi.
I don't know that he had his Judaism from his mother or his father. We just don't know where his Shevet comes from.
No, I think
Yosy, this Rashi is only because it's a chashash that she's Jewish. If he knew for sure that she wasn't, then the blood wouldn't be Jewish.
Say that again, please.
This Rashi is only talking about a case where there's a chashash that she's Jewish. We're not talking about a
No,
regular
there's a
case where,
chash that people from this city have
Right.
Jewish roots.
and that's the only reason why the Vlad is a mamzer. But if he knew for a fact that she was a guy, then it wouldn't be Jewish. It's only in this case.
No. Rashi the favors that
No,
we're
he's
afraid
only
that a
referring to this
Jewish man.
case. He's only referring to
We're
this.
afraid that a
He's only
Jewish
referring to
man.
the case of this city.
Yeah, I understand, but if I know for a fact that the mother is a non-Jew, yet the child is still Jewish, so then a suffix of that would also be a problem. I'm not understanding.
The way
reason
I
why
understand it
you
is
cannot
because
accept
it's
tradition-
suffix that she's Jewish, right? And that's what Rashi's
No, it's
talking
not.
about.
What do you mean it's a suffix that's Jewish? No, we
Because
have
of
a
the
case-
city.
We know
it's
that
talking about-
Jewish men lived with Goyish women. Way
No,
back
but we're
then.
talking about the city that the Shvatim were in. So there's a chashash.
We know a lot of the Shvatim settled in
The
the
whole
city.
point is because the chashash is that this woman might be Jewish
Which woman are you talking about?
from
The
this
woman that
city.
we used to be in college today?
From this city. Rashi's referring to this
We're
city.
talking about if you find a man from this city, and a man from this city is Makadosh, your daughter, right? We consider your daughter married to a potential mamzer. Why is it possible he's a potential mamzer? Because maybe sometime in his lineage, generations back, his father was Jewish and his mother wasn't, which would render him a Jewish mamzer.
But it's only because it's in a specific city where the Shvatim established.
That's correct.
Right?
That's correct.
But I'm talking about if you knew it was another part of the world where for sure there was
In
no.
another part of the world, you don't have to worry. The Gemara says you go Basar and you assume it's a non-Jew. It's only if this occurs in a city where you know for sure that there was once a Sherish Shvatim settled there. You're right. Everywhere else in the world, you go Basar.
I'm saying this Rashi is only referring to this part of the world. He's not referring.
That's right. Rashi
It's not a
refers
blanket
specifically to the city.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
you're right.
I think what
You're 100%
what
right.
he's saying,
But even so,
if we know for sure that she wasn't Jewish, then the Vlad is not a mamzer, right?
no. Rashi's saying that if a Jewish man lives with a non-Jewish woman, the child is a Jewish mamzer.
But again, it's
Even-
only in the part in the city where we thought that the source fucking.
If I know that this woman is non-Jewish, it doesn't matter where in the world she is. If a Jewish man marries a woman who knows non-Jewish, what's the difference where this marriage occurs?
Because the whole point is, if it's here, then there's a chashash that she's Jewish.
This is not a chash. What do you mean? If a man marries a Goyish woman, so there's no
Okay.
suffix here. If a man marries a woman who he knows is non-Jewish, what is the status of that woman?
Okay, I don't know. We keep going back and forth because
The reason why we think over there that the man is Jewish is because of this, because he's in that area.
That's correct.
Right, but don't you say, why is it only over here? The reason why.
I'm not saying why. I'm saying that's what Rashi. That's what we're referring to.
The context over here is that we're
Exactly.
worried that the woman is Jewish. Isn't that the context?
No. The context over here is if your daughter meets a guy in this city, and this guy gives her kedushin, and you say, don't worry about it. He's a goy. It doesn't count. But it turns out that you need to be concerned that he might be Jewish, because his great-grandfather might have been Jewish. His great-grandfather might have been Jewish. That's what Rashi's saying. So if John from this city, which is all a goyish city, so you assume everyone there's goyish. If he's mekadesh your daughter, you have a big problem. You need to get from that guy. Why? Because it's possible that this John, who you think is a goy, because he's in a goyish city, might actually have Jewish roots enough to make him Jewish.
Okay.
But the funny thing is if I was talking about Jewish roots, I would always say maybe his grandmother, maybe his mother's mother, maybe she was Jewish. Why would I think it's the father? Rashi is saying a chiddush that has nothing to do with the subject of this Gemara. Rashi could just have easily have said maybe his mother was Jewish, and that's why today he might be Jewish. But Rashi doesn't say that. Rashi says his grandfather might have been Jewish, and that's a very big chiddush.
What do you do with the pasuk in Ezra where Ezra tells the Jews coming back to leave their goyish wives and children?
Yeah, Rashi's not saying that the Jewish mother wouldn't make you Jewish.
No,
Rashi
this
might
is the
say
Jewish
that
father.
also makes him Jewish.
He tells no. But in Ezra tells the Yidden coming back to leave their goyish wives and children,
Right.
implying the children
Oh,
are
and
not
children.
Jewish.
You mean and children?
And
That's your
children.
question on the
And children.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what Rashi here would do with that. That's a good question.
Right. That I think is one of the Gemara in your it's in Yevamos. What Daf?
We're about to learn it on Amud Aleph. We're going to learn it on Amud Aleph.
Okay, well there you go.
But right now Rashi says it. Now everyone's getting into a big tumult about this. The reason why Rashi says this, Tosfos tells us, is because on Amud Aleph, the Gemara is going to say that first generation of Yidden that moved into this Goyish city, that they were put into this Goyish city, all of those Jewish women were unable to have children. So therefore, it's impossible that any of those Jewish women that generation had children from Goyish men. They might have been nevelas, they might have been violated, but nevertheless, they couldn't have had children because they were all not able to have children. So therefore, the only way it's possible for children to have come out from Goyim, from the Asher Shvatim, would have been with Jewish males and non-Jewish females.
That's a strange.
I mean, it's a Gemara it's a Yerushalmi in Yevamos that concludes that the son of Jewish women is your son.
Rashi's going to quote it on Amud Aleph. We're about to learn it. So we're about to learn it. Yeah. So again, the Gemara doesn't blind like that, but that's why Rashi learns here in Rav Asi that was the situation. Okay, so that's right. That's right. The whole child is raising alarms, as the doctor says. But I hope this sugya rings a bell. Okay. So let's see.
1 minute. So that's a nest that they weren't able to have children? What is that?
No, the Gemara says that they were going through hunger and torture and deprivation during that period of time, so they were ill.
Uh-huh.
So we listed off a whole bunch of cities where it's factual that the people of the Asher Shvatim were put there. Okay, and that took us to Amar Rabbi Yochanan, V'chulon Lifsol. What does that mean? Rashi, what that means is all of these cities where the Asher Shvatim settled, it's not saying anything good about the situation. It means the children will be puzzled. And Rashi here has a different twist. Ruban Mamzerim, most of those children will be Mamzerim. Shenitmu benois aser shashvatim ba'ovdes kachavim. The Jewish women were mixed amongst the male goyim, uveneim, and the children of a Jewish woman, Hareyan ki Yisraelim, are considered Jewish. So here, Rashi says the classic case where it follows Judaism follows the mother. But there has to be an Nishim Mamzeris. Why is there a mamzer? Why would we have Shash Mamzeris over here? Because this is not going that Eved the Akama Baal Bas Yisrael Vlad Mamzer. So the question is, because Jewish women had relationships with Goyish men, where is there a mamzer here? Zok Rashi, they were not acting as Jews. They weren't able to act as Jews. People married women who they were not allowed to marry according to Judaism, and they were Jewish. So therefore, Bahrain Mamzerim, these cities where there were Jewish women married to Goyish men, being raised as non-Jews, they ended up creating Mamzerim. So Gemara, Kiamrisa Kamei de Shmuel. So we quoted here from Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Rabbi Asi. So when this halacha was said over, the Amar Yehadar Misa Lahadar Vasi Kamei de Shmuel Rabbi Yehuda, after he was a Talmud of Rav Asi, he went to learn by Shmuel. So when Rabbi Yehuda said over this halacha to Shmuel, the Choshen L'Kedushin, that if a man from one of these cities marries your daughter, we have to be Choshen that it's a good Kedushin. We don't assume he's a goy. Amar Lei, he told him, Bincha Habama Yisraelis Kari Bincha. The child of a Jewish male who is, I'm sorry, the child of a Jewish female, that's considered a Ben Yisrael. The Ein Binah, or Ben Bincha Haba Min Oived is Kechavim. But if the mother is a non-Jew, that's not called Kari Bincha, Ela Binah, it's considered Binah. Let's see Rashi. Rashi here quotes the Yerushalmi that Avigdor was talking about. So Shmuel said, Bincha Haba Min Yisrael is Kari Bincha, Ve'ein Bincha Haba Min Oived is Kechavim, Kari Bincha Ela Binah. How do you know it? The nafkalon mechiyoser es bincha me'acharai. We learn it because the pasuk says, if you marry goyim, Yosy, male tense, he will turn your son away from me. The likes of kisaser espincha. It doesn't say that she will, your goyish wife, will turn your children away from Hashem. Alma lav abitoy loisikach levincha mahader. The Torah is not referring to a case where you're marrying a goyish girl, because if it's a case where a Jewish man marries a goyish girl, it shouldn't say Yosy espincha, he will turn your child away, the goyish spouse. Rather, it would say the goyish spouse, meaning the woman. She will be sasir, your child. Shemami, no, since the Torah is not concerned about a goyish wife turning her child with you away from Yiddishkeit, Shemami, no, the nami yerledes ben lavoidis kechavim. If you do have a child with a non-Jewish woman, loy bin chamikri, it's not a Jewish child. It's not a Jewish child. It's not your child. She might be sasir, but it's not bincha, because this is not your son. We consider this a non-Jew. So, well, from this pasuk, well, if you look that way, that's correct. Fact Gemara, I v'ha'ika banais, Zok Rashi, v'ika banais shenashvu, v'nasim oivdei kechavim v'lidumahem. You, Shmuel, are telling me nothing to worry about, because any child born to a non-Jewish woman from a Jewish man would not be Jewish anyway. But what about the Jewish children that were born from Jewish girls that were taken advantage of by the goyim? Ravina said, Shemamina, and Ravina said, Shemamina ben bitcha, habamina oived kechavim kari bitcha. You see from here that the son of your daughter that comes from a goy is called your son. In other words, because he has a Jewish mother. So to Gemara, Gemiri, we learned the binta da hu dara, all of the women of that generation, it's tariya, it's taru. They lost their ability to have children. So therefore, we're not choishes that there's any Jewish children there, because the only way there was children with a Jewish parent would have been if the father was Jewish. And Ravina says that if the father is not Jewish, then if the father is Jewish and the mother is not Jewish, then the child will be a goy. Yiddishkeit does not follow the father. V'amar Ravina zok Rashi, like among the parak base. Ben bitcha haba min ha'ovis kechavim kari bincha dichsav bitcha la'isitein levnoi ki yasir, he will turn as bincha me'acharai with the likes of ki sasir shmami na da bitcha la'isitein levnoi kai. The problem is only with your daughter marrying a goyish man, because he will raise the children in a non-Jewish fashion. If your daughter is given to a goy, she might have a son for this husband. And the non-Jewish father will turn this Jewish child away from Yiddishkeit. It calls it a son. So therefore, the women of that door, their uterus got damaged. The Vanasu occurrence. They all became childless, maybe because of the tsar that they're going through, maybe because of the hunger, or whatever it is, they lost their ability to have children. So therefore, we don't need to worry, Zok Shmuel, about anything that happened in these cities, because the Jewish women didn't have children, and the Goyish women that had children with Jewish husbands would not have been an issue.
But they eventually must have had children. You can't say that they lost their ability forever to have children.
Why?
Under the immediate circumstances of the Gullus, and maybe for a year or so, but eventually they assimilated into the host population.
But who said they had children? It sounds nifka rachman.
So no Jewish woman that went into Gullus from the Aser Shashvatim ever had children?
I don't know. Then they wouldn't be around anymore. If they're still around, there must have been some women that had children, right? So there must have been some women that had children, but I guess it was not a big amount to worry about. Because if no Jewish women had children, then there would be nothing left in them.
No, you mentioned that after, because of the Tsaros and everything they went to, they wouldn't have children. They couldn't.
I don't know if that's true.
But once the Tsaros stopped and they were just in the community, I imagine that they would be able to have children.
Okay. So maybe it's at that time, so they wouldn't have been violated and they wouldn't have had children with any goy. But maybe later on, when they were settled, could be. That makes sense. Because otherwise, we wouldn't have anything left of them. Ikud Amri.
Then we have to be worried about the fact that there's none there.
We are worried.
Didn't Ravina say that we don't have to be worried?
Oh no, maybe by the time their health came back, they were no longer under danger of being violated by men.
Oh, then they would
Right. Once the tsaris went away, maybe that's what they would say. Yeah. So tomorrow, Ikud Amri, Kamrisa come to Shmuel. When Yehuda said this over to Shmuel, that the people of this town, you have to choshed that they're Jewish from Zerim. Amr lay, he said, Lo zazu misham acha asum oivdei kachavim gemur. They didn't leave that maimed until they paskined and declared that these people were not Jewish, so there's no need to worry about a kedushin from them. Shenemar.
By the way, my grandmother told me that during the Holocaust, at least in her camps, most women did not get periods.
Shenemar b'Hashem bogdu ki bonim zorim yeledu. They were boiged in Hashem. They rebelled against Hashem, and they had children that were non-Jewish. So that seems to indicate once again that the children born to non-Jewish mothers would not be Jewish. So Avigdor said, ask where you know from. We have a lot of hints over here, like Avigdor said from Yisrael. Yosef Rabbi Yosef, Acharid Rav Kahana. Rabbi Yosef was in the Beis Medrash, and he sat behind Rav Kahana. The Yosef Rav Kahana made Rav Yehuda, and Rav Kahana sat in front of Rav Yehuda. The Yosef Omer, and this is what they were talking and learning about that day. Asidin li Yisrael, the Avdi Yom Tova. Klal Yisrael is going to have a Yom Tov. On which day? Ki Charvi Talmud. When the city of Talmud, which we said is full of mamzerim, it's a dangerous place for Yuchsin. When that city is destroyed, it's going to be a good day for Klal Yisrael because mishum de mamzerim heim umetamim be Yisrael u'paisel. They end up getting mixed into the yichus of Klal Yisrael, and it's going to ruin our yichus. So therefore, we'll be happy the day that city gets destroyed. But what do you mean there's going to be a Yom Tov when it happens? It happened already. So tomorrow, no, Hahi Talmud Havoy. That wasn't Talmud, that was Talmud, it was a different city. Rav Ashi Yomer, Hainu Talmud, Hainu Talmud. In fact, it's the same city, but it still wasn't fully destroyed because it had 9 lives. It would always move and dodge. The city would move and dodge the bullets. If they were attacked from one side and the city was damaged, so they would expand the city on the other side. Then so they would move it around. The city would sort of move to react to where the danger is, and therefore it was never totally eliminated. And when it's totally eliminated, then there's going to be a Yom Tov. Rav Hamnuna kamei de ullah. Rav Hamnuna was sitting in front of ullah, the Gahava b'Shmaitza, and they were shemuzing and learning. Rashi's maksha, they were asking kashas and learning. And what happened was ullah was very impressed with Rav Hamnuna. And ullah said, Omar. Ullah said, Ma gavra u'ma gavra. What an unbelievable person this fellow ullah is. He's a huge Talmud Chacham. Rav Hamnuna was blown away. Ullah was blown away at what a great Talmud Chacham Rav Hamnuna was. And then he added in a little dig. Ilav the Harpanya Masi. It's such a shame that he comes from the city of Harpanya because he's probably a mamzer. He's such a Talmud Chacham, such a great guy. He's probably a mamzer. What a shame. What a shame. You ask information about a guy, about a shidduch. What type of guy is this, Rav Hamnuna? Oh, you see a chashuv v'cher. He's such a tzaddik. But it's a shame he's a mamzer. So and then the shidduch doesn't go through. And then the person has time is, how come you told him I was a mamzer? He said, I was mishabeach you. I was mishabeach you. So that's what happened. And what happened was Ichsif. Rav Hamnuna got very embarrassed when his Rebbe referred to him, or when Ullah referred to him as someone who doesn't have good yichus. And we know a mamzer is an azponim. So a mamzer wouldn't be embarrassed. So from the fact that Rav Hamnuna got embarrassed, Ullah said, hey, he can't be a mamzer because his personality is such that proves that he's not a mamzer. Amar Loi, so we asked him, I want to know which city you really are from. So we asked him the following: Kesef Gilgalta, taxes, Lahecha Yahavas. Who do you pay your taxes to? Now, if you're dual citizens in Canada and US, you pay to both countries. But in those days, there was still some mercy, and you only had to pay tax in one country. So who do you pay tax to? Amar Loi Lefum Nahara. I pay taxes to the Jewish city of Pumnahara. Amr Lay, so Ullah said, oh, Gavaldik, so you're not a mamzer. Imkain mi Pumnahara. You must be a citizen of Pumnahara. And therefore it stems, so not only are you a Master Talmud Chacham, you're also not a mamzer. Okay, my Harpanya, where does this name Harpanya come from? Where Ullah indicated people from that city don't have good yichus. Amar Bzeira, it's Har Shakoil Pointing Boy. Anybody who can't find a shidduch anywhere else because they have bad yichus and nobody wants to touch them, if they go to this city, there you could find a wife no matter what your reputation is. But Masnizatana, we didn't nabraisa, Kol She'ein Makar Mishpachtoi B'Shiftoi, anybody who doesn't know where he comes from, so his yichus is sketchy, Nifner Lasham, he could go there and find a willing partner. Amarava, the Amuka Mishael. These people that they're mamzerim are worse than being in Gehenna. Why? Shenemar mi'achor lefteim mimavus agole. Gehenna eventually ends, right? Gehenna eventually ends. The ilu psul detu, the psul of yuchsin, someone who's a mamzer, less tutakanta, they don't have any way out. Psul darpanya, even those who are bad yichus from arpanya, you know where there's a mamzerim there. Psul demation. It's because of the people from Mashan who are even worse than the people of Arpanya that settled in Arpanya. And the Psul de Mishan, their apostle, Mishum Psuli de Talmud. So that shows how bad Talmud was. We found Mamzerim there, that even the runoff from Talmud 2 times were still contaminating the cities. Psuli de Talmud was Mishum Avdei Shloimoi, which we discussed yesterday. Behind Damar Inchi, Kava Rabba, the Kava Zuta, Migdidar, the Ozol L'Shoil, both Rashi, they're both bad. All the Ptulim, no matter what they are, they all roll down. They all roll down to Sha'oil, which is Gehenim, and Sha'oil, Talmud, Talmud, L'Meshan, L'Arpanya. So the Sha'oil was the lowest level of badness, and it gets worse and worse and worse as it moves down. Rashi says, Kavi Rabba, Kavizuta, Efa Gedoyla, the Efa Ktana, Shnei Muvasm. They're both not good. From a call up Ptulim, Misgalgalin, the Yordim, the Shoil. All the Ptulim, it's like figurative. All the Ptulim roll into Gehenim. And what the Shoil cannot purify rolls over into Talmud. Sha'oil, Gehenim is not as bad as Talmud. The time of Chedalil, it's the reasoning that we said before. The Ilul Yardi Gehenim Ikatakanta, Yardi Gehenim Avatakanda, Upsul Ditu ain't the higher. There's no way that they can cleanse that psul. Miskalkal, it rolls. Okay, that takes us to the end of the first part. I'm sorry?
It's a curious conclusion because this is going back to the mamzerim that came out of the Avadim of Shlomo HaMelech. It seems like the Gemara gives up on this idea that the sons or the children of Goyim with Jewish women are mamzerim, and then it comes back to it. It concludes with it.
Well, maybe here we're talking about the child of Jewish women, the children of Jewish women that had Goyish husbands.
With Goyish husbands, did we not
Right.
abandon that that it makes them mamzerim? Did the Gemara not abandon that? No.
No, there is still a shita who holds that Eved.
It's one thing to say there's a shita. It's another thing to say that all of these towns are. It seems the Gemara is coming on very strongly that this is how we paskin, because these towns are all mamzerim forever.
I hear.
Doesn't that sound like it's just a shita?
If the whole thing is based on Eved Ba'akma Ba'al B'Sisrael Avlan Mamzer, so why is this Gemara carrying on with it if that's not how we paskin?
Yeah, it concludes with it very strongly that it goes on forever.
Yeah, I hear. It's a very good point because it's not a libid hilchza. I don't think we paskin Eved Ba'akma Ba'al B'Sisrael Avlan Mamzer.
If we paskin like that today, we'd have big problems.
Indeed, yeah.
Take a look at it slightly different way. First on the basis, trying to gather that in and start the Yiddish type and all the
Eventually, all the Bavzerim are going to become Torah.
How's that?
I don't know. You'll know he's going to figure it out.
The more it says forever, is what we talk about.
I guess forever doesn't mean when Mashiach comes. I'm not sure. These are all very good questions.
Tell Yovel.
Maybe they go by Yovel, yeah.
It needs to be very paranoid because it says whoever doesn't know who his shave is. I don't know my shave. You know your shave.
We assume that we're from Shevet Yehuda. Okay. Hadin alach chamisha, hadin alach chamisha shenoshim, hadin alach chamisha shenoshim, hadin alach chamisha shenoshim. But the Gemara also does say that from a person's personality, if someone doesn't act like a mamzer, he's probably not a mamzer. So that's our saving grace.
I wonder if that's where it comes from. When somebody who is difficult is called a mamzer,
because
personality-wise, he's such a mamzer, right?
Yeah. Okay. Ketzad, Ashes. Now we're getting back to Yevamos again. But we actually learned the sugya already, so it shouldn't be too challenging. Ketzad Ashes Achav Shalahoy Bailam. What is the case of Ashes Achav Shalahoy Bailam? So the Mishnah tells us, Shnei Achim, Reuben and Shimon, Ubeitz Echad Mehen. Reuben Rachmanaton died and left over an almana. After Reuben died, V'noiled lahen ach. Now Levi was born. So there's a third brother that was born after Reuben died. So the third brother Levi cannot do Yibam, but Shimon could do Yibam. So Shimon did Yibam. The Achach Yibam Hasheni as Eshes Achav. Then Shimon did Yibam, and now Shimon has two wives. The wife that was once the wife of Reuben, who made Yibam on, and his own wife, Umeis. And now Shimon died. So these two women fall to Levi to Yibam. So Harishayna Yaita Mishum Eshes Achav Shleihay Bailamu. Harishayna meaning the woman that was originally Reuben's wife, and now it's Shimon's wife. She is usher to Yibam to Levi because of Reuben still, because when she was Reuben's almana, it was an Eshes Achav Shleihay Bailamu. Vashnia, and Shimon's second wife is Mishum Tzarasa, it's because she's the tzara of the erva of Eshes Achav Shleihay Bailamu. What happens if Shimon did not do Yibam on the woman? Rather, what did Shimon do with Reuben's almana? Also by Maimer. He made Kedushin, which is not one of the things prescribed by the Torah to do. So it creates like a Kedushin D'Rabbanan of some sort, Umeis, and then he died. So now, Shimon's affiliation with this woman isn't a real marriage. It's like in between. So therefore, we can't say that Shimon's other wife is the tzara of Reuben's first almana, because Shimon wasn't really married to her. Maimer doesn't quite do it. But we can't let Levi do Yibam either, because there is some type of connection between Shimon and Reuben's wife. So therefore, we require that they make chalitza not Yibam. Zok Gemara, Amar Rav Nachman. So if you go back to the Mishnah, it says Harishayna Yaitza. And how did we describe the Rishayna? Rishayna is the wife that was once the wife of Reuben, right? She's the one who was also as Eshes Achav Shleihay Bailamu. But there were some Mishnayos that were Garis Hashniya Yaitza Mishum Eshes Achav Shleihay Bailamu. So there are some Gersayos that refer to Reuben's almana as the Rishayna, like our Mishnah, but there were Gersayos that referred to Reuben's almana as the Shniya. Zok to Gemara, Amar Nachman, Manditani Rishayna Lo Mistabish. It makes sense to call this woman Rishayna, and Manditani Shniya Lo Mistabish. And it also is justified to call this woman Shniya. Why is that? Manditani Rishayna, if you refer to this woman, to Reuben's almana, as the Rishayna Lo Mistabish, that wouldn't be considered a mistake, because my Rishayna Nafila. Why is she the first? Because she's the first woman who fell to evil. Because Shimon's wife didn't fall to evil until Shimon died. But Reuben's wife had already fallen to evil when Reuben died. My Rishayna Nafila. Umanditani Shniya, and even if you want to call Reuben's wife the second woman, Lo Mishtabish, that wouldn't be a mistake either. My Shniya L'Nesuin. She's Shimon's second wife, right? She's Shimon's second wife. Shimon had his original wife, and she's his second wife, so that's why she could be referred to as Shniya. Frank Gemara, who said she was Shimon's second wife? Maybe Shimon was single when he did Yibum, and then he married the second wife. Wouldn't it have the same halacha? Milo Yaskinan, the Yavim Bachakanis. Maybe in fact this woman was Shimon's second wife as well. So Shniya is not a good reason. That's not a good reason to call this almana the Shniya. Elamai Shniya bin Yisuin. She's the one who was married 2 times. So Shniya means she was married 2 times. Shanistas Shnei Pamim Achas Labal Bachas Liyam. That's Reb Shimon. That's Reb Shimon. We're going to get into that, but Baruch Hashem not today. That tomorrow we'll get back into Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon made it complicated. It depends if he was born while she was still Yavim or after the Yibum, right? Yeah, that's going to come up. Baruch Hashem, that's a level of complication we don't have to deal with today. Zok to Gemara. Where do we even know that there's such a problem of Eishes Achav Shalai Bailam? Amar Vidam Arav, Amar Krok, Yeshu Achim Yachtov. When the Torah introduces the Parsha of Yibum, it says that the brothers were there together. What does it mean together? They must have been living together in the world. Prat, this excludes from the mitzvah of Yibum, Eishes Achav Shalai Bailam. It says Yachtov. We learn another thing from Yachtov, that Miyuchadim Menachla. They have to share nachla. Rashi says the definition of miyuchadim benachla, because there's going to be two definitions we're going to play with. The two people who we're talking about make yibum have to be people who would yarshin each other. Prat la'echav minaim. This excludes if it's a brother from the mother, where sure eventually if there's no other relatives you'll yarshin, but it's not a direct. It's not on the first tier of yours. Rabbi Omar, Achin min ha'av. How do I know that it has to be Achin min ha'av? I don't learn it from Yachtov. I learn it from a different source. Yolef achva mibnei Yaakov. It says Achim in the Parsha of Yibum. It says Achim by the brothers by the Shvatim, by the children of Yaakov. Ma lahalom min ha'av v'lo min. Just like the Shvatim were brothers, they're called Achim, and they're only brothers through their father, but not all brothers through their father. That's how we know that the Yibum only applies to an Av. So we have two makars, either Yachtov, or we're learning the word Achim from the brothers, the Shvatim. If you're learning it because of the word Achim, well, sure you have a pasuk Achim by Yaakov's children. But guess what? We have the pasuk of Achim by Arias as well. It says Eishes Achichahu. So we see the word brother even in other contexts. Rashi says, Arias says Ervas Eishes Achicha, the erva of your brother's wife, and that refers even to your brother from the mother. So maybe Yibum should also apply even to a brother from the mother. So Gemara Donim Achim me Achim, ve'in Donim Achim me Achicha. It says Achim by the Shvatim, it says Achim by Yibum, but it says Achicha by Arias, so we want to compare it to a word that's identical. Frank the Gemara, my nafkamina. The words don't have to be identical when you make a Gzera Shava. There's a famous Gzera Shava by the Parsha of Nigei Batim. Tanu Devei Rabbi Shmuel, V'Shava Koinu V'Koinu. This is speaking about when they first find an egg in a home, they lock the house up and they come back after 7 days. And there it says V'Shava Koinu. And then the Torah speaks about a second time where they lock it up, and there's a Uvakan. So the limit is that whatever process the Torah says has to be done when the Kohen comes back after the first set of 7 days, that's the same process he will follow when he comes back after the second set of 7 days. And we dash on Zui Shiva, Zui Bia. We consider the word Shava Kohen and the word Ba Kohen close enough to pass information from one to the next. So why can't you do that over here too and learn Achim from Achicha? Zok to Gemara, you will do that. We do that if there's no better word to compare it to, like in the case of Nigei Batim. Here we have the word Achim to compare it to. Why would we go look to compare it to Achicha? So therefore, we did Dami Le Yalpin. But I have another place where it says Achim, where it includes uncles too. But let of Achva Achva Miloi. The Ksiv Ki Anoshim Achim Anachnu. Avram referred to Lot as Achim. So maybe you could do Yibum on your father's brother's wife. Maybe that's where you do Yibum. Zok Gemara Mistavra Mibnei Yaakov Havel Elamei. It makes more sense to learn Achim from the Bnei Yaakov Mishum de Mafni, because the word Achim mentioned in the Parsha of the Shvatim is an extra word. It doesn't need to be there. It could have said Shnei Asar Avadecha B'nei Avinu. We're 12 servants, all the children of our father. But it sticks in an extra word. Uksiv Achim, Shnei Asar Avadim Achim, it says over there. Shmamina, the word Achim is extra. So if the word Achim is extra, we'll say that's what's teaching what Yibum is, brothers from the father, not brothers from the mother. Zokt the Gemara, but we already know they were brothers from the context. So we don't need the word Achim to tell us that they're brothers. When they said B'nai Avinu, we already knew what their relation was. We said that Achim teaches you that it's brothers from the father, and we said earlier that Yachtov teaches you the same thing, that they yarshin together. But we need both words. You know why? Because of Achmana Achim, if it only said Achim, Havamina Leilaf Achva Achva Miloy. I would have thought you learned it from Lloyd that it's that it's even an uncle's wife. And if you're going to say like what we just said a second ago, that it's not extra, in fact, it is extra. It is extra. Even by Lloyd, it's extra. By the case of Lloyd, it didn't have to say Achim. It could have used the word Rayim. Uksiv Achim, yet it says Achim. It's used a word that wasn't really quite accurate. That also creates a reason to darshan from it. So we would have darshaned from Lloyd to tell you that even an uncle's wife, one does Yibam. Because of Rachmana Yachtav, that's what the Torah had to say, Yachtav, by the price of Yibam, to tell you how many Yuchadim and Nachal. So Tosfos asks, well, if that's the case, it should have skipped Yachtav by Yibam and should have skipped Achim by Lloyd. And then I would have by default learned Achim from the Bnei Yaakov, right? That's Tosfos' discussion.
There's another reference in this week's Parsha, Su'es Echechem, carry your brothers when Nadav and Abihu were burnt, their cousins were told to take Su'es Echechem, carry your brothers out.
So you see that there was even by a cousin. Well, we know by Boaz it was the same way. The eating of Ibam, although the Torah says Allah it only applies to a brother, we see that there were other relationships. Yehuda was the daughter-in-law, right? And Boaz with Boaz it was a cousin.
Right. They called everybody Achim, and actually in Rus, many relationships were called Achim.
So Zok to Gemara. Because of Rachmana Yachtav, because of Rachmana Yachtav, and if it only said Yachtav, Havamina, the Miyachti Ba'ava Uva Ima. I would have thought that the only type of woman you do Yibam on is if both it's a brother from the father and from the mother. Shricha, that's why we have Achim as well. Why would you think that Yibam would mean Daf gives the brother from your father and the brother from your mother? Yibam Benachla Tola Rachmana. We know Yibam is totally nachla because we say that the Yovim, Yarshins, the entire state of his brother. Like Rashi says over here, Rashi says, Yibam v'Yibam and nachla tolya dechsiv Yokim al Shem achav ameis, and we learned it means al Shem achav v'nachla sheyeresh hameyavim kol nichse ameis vein achin chokanimon. He gets to stand in his brother's place. So if it's totally nachla, if he's miyavim. That's correct. So therefore, and v'nachla manaf, and we know nachla is primarily Yarshin first, the brother from your father. So I would have automatically known that Yibam is only a brother from the father. So I still would have thought it's the mother as well. So the Kabishtari Erva Gabe, it's a massive chiddush that the Torah is being matter and Isra Rayis. You might argue, you might say that it's only if there are such close brothers that they share a mother and a father, only there is the Torah permitting Yibam. Shricha, Achim, to tell you that even if it's only a brother from the mother, and not a brother, even if it's only a brother from the father, but not a brother from the mother, it will still trigger a Chiyav Yibam. We're going to stop here because this gets into the new sugi of Zika, so we'll stop here and Mishnah will be Mamshech tomorrow.
Look at it the other way. The Torah was only mastered when it was a brother only from one of the parents. It's not such a brother. When it's a real brother, two parents, then the Torah says no.